Good morning and welcome to the 12th in our Shift, Sustain, and Succeed series. We welcome anyone to join us each Tuesday and Thursday as we do our best to provide answers to the most pressing questions our businesses have in navigating the COVID-19 situation. When we started to understand the threat of COVID to our community and potentially employees and customers, businesses we knew it changed more quickly for some businesses. Today, we'll explore some of the opportunities we observed businesses taking that have allowed them to survive and even thrive through the changes. For the last 2 months, we've been waiting for any good news. And last week, we got it. Restaurants are open, but not without many changes. While lodging never was directed to close, some would say it was almost impossible for them to stay open, or at least operate as we know it. Today, we've invited Melissa Bova, the Vice President of Government Affairs for the Pennsylvania Restaurant and Lodging Association, to join us and talk to us about what she's observed and how the association has been assisting restaurants and lodging establishments. I'll remind everyone that we are in an ever-changing situation where what we think is fact today may be replaced by new information tomorrow. Everything shared today is based on the information that we have today. And I think Melissa said even now we're waiting for more instruction from the governor, more guidance. So if you have additional questions, please submit them in the Zoom chat and we'll do our best to include them at the end of this call or to follow up with you. So Melissa, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, early in March of this year, businesses were told to close and restaurants, most of them immediately closed, even if it was just overnight. Restaurants were among the hardest hit initially, but we watched many of them actually open up pretty quickly for carryout and delivery. Do you have any idea right now how many were not able to do that and are kind of, at least for the time being, remain closed?
Our estimation is that about 50% of the restaurants are operating with some type of takeout or delivery model right now. Now that has changed a little bit, of course, as we've seen things like the P3 come out where people need to reopen. But generally, about 50% have tried to change their operations to just get through it. And for those that are doing takeout, if they're making 30% based on what they were doing before, that's actually pretty good for takeout. So it is not a cure-all. It's not getting people where they need to be, but it's certainly getting them through some of the harder times right now.
Great. And hey, I can't let slip by your quick remark there about PPP, because we got some good news too overnight that for those that were granted the PPP loans, there's a little more extra forgiveness there. So we maybe will do a follow-up session on that. It is really impressive how quickly and methodically many of these restaurants and of course lodging too reopened, reacted, made changes. How were they able to do that so quickly? What do you think, is the explanation for why they were successful at that?
And I'm going to say it's also one of the reasons why it's awesome to kind of represent the industry. In our industry, we will survive. I mean, we operate on thin margins, 4% to 6% on average. And we pivot and we figure out how to get through it. And we really saw that when the shutdown happened. I think there was a day or two of shock and no one expected this. What do I do? And then we really just saw people getting creative in this space. And that's just, our industry is harder hit than any other industry in this crisis, and it's going to take us longer than anyone to come out of it. But to see how so many businesses just said, okay, this is my foreseeable future. What do I need to do to get through it? That's just the resourcefulness and inherent nature of the hospitality industry.
Now, what did you see as being similar or different for lodging from restaurants? Because I think for most of us, we go to restaurants, if not every day, every week, but we may not be using lodging on that kind of regular basis. What were the kind of differences between the two?
Well, and that really speaks to the problem that the lodging community has had, because the lodging community is for transient guests. While they were allowed to stay open, we had a travel ban. People weren't traveling. So hotels that had restaurant service, some of them were doing takeout. But for really, I would say the first 6 to 8 weeks, there was just no transient staying in hotels. There was nobody filling the space. We saw a lot of hotels that shut down and are still shut down just because their guests aren't the people in the community that are going to the restaurants. Their guests are the people coming from out of state or other counties to stay there. And that's really the area where they were hit harder than anyone else.
And Melissa, I apologize. I didn't ask, kind of prepare you with this ahead, but I'm curious, did you see any lodging facilities do anything interesting that, out of the ordinary to maybe bring locals or, it seems to me that around here we had some of the major employers that needed to provide some distancing or quarantine that may have reached out. Did you see any of that going on?
Yes. So actually, we worked with the federal government, our lodging properties all across the state, federal government and state government, to offer rooms for quarantine, for emergency responders. Just the lodging industry pivoted and said, we have empty rooms, how can we help? So we saw a lot of them do that. We saw a lot of them, like I say, get creative in the food and beverage space in terms of takeout, or if they had a wine expanded permit, kind of replacing the lack of the LCB stores that were closed for a while and providing takeout in those parameters. But generally, the only way that hotels really had guests for about 8 weeks there was if it was first responders, people traveling to get home. We had a lot of Canadians coming up through Pennsylvania to get back to Canada during the crisis. Truckers are out there. I mean, a lot of essential personnel still needed overnight accommodations. So that hotels were able to provide that. It certainly didn't fill up the hotel space. And to this point today, 8 out of 10 hotel rooms are still empty.
Wow. Well, both of these industries, of course, rely heavily on visitor and tourism money. Have you gained any sense of what the impact of loss to our rural areas like Venango County might be?
I mean, your destination marketing organization is totally reliant on hotel dollars to operate. And since the hotels have not been occupied, essentially their funding has been cut since the middle of March. So there's going to need to be time to come back from that. Of course, we're looking at some federal benefits, maybe some state help that can be used locally, because you as the chamber and your destination marketing organization, it's going to be all of you that are going to encourage people to come back into the area. It's going to be those transient guests that's going to bring the hotels back, the restaurants back at the end of the day. So right now, I mean, tourism is hard hit universally across the state. And the thought is that we won't bounce back until the first quarter of 2023
Wow.
to be back to where we were before all of this started. So we have a ways to go. But as people start traveling again, as those dollars start trickling in, as we start to get some of that help that's needed to all of you to bring people back to the community, that's going to be really important, not only for you, your businesses, but also for the state.
Absolutely. And of course, for us here, Emily's on the call, that's the Oil Region Alliance. And we know there's a huge trickle-down effect. So people look to organizations like ours to provide everything from festivals and events to just information that we get out. And so we really do rely on those tax dollars to flow. Let's hope that we all have a lot of pent up desire to travel and get out there and spend our stimulus money, right? And support our lodging and restaurants. So let's talk about the reopening a bit. Hopefully by now, business owners have had a chance to review the CDC guidelines. Can you help us understand a little bit about what are rules and what are recommendations? What should we be following? What should we advise our businesses to be doing?
So CDC is kind of, I would call it the baseline. So CDC guidance is really what states and counties are looking at to create their specific reopening guidelines. So you should look at CDC, but when it comes to your daily operations, reopening, compliance, you're really going to want to be looking at the documents that are coming from the governor's office and the Department of Health. And that's the general business guidance for your operations. Last week, we did get guidance related specifically to restaurant operations. Those are really the pieces of guidance for your outdoor activities. There's guidance now specific to that. Those are really the standards you're going to need to meet to be compliant and to avoid any penalties or shutdowns that might come from being non-compliant. So CDC is a great baseline, but the state's going to be the enforcer in this, and it's those guidelines that you're going to need to be compliant with.
Great. And of course, I just switched the slide, so you'll see that you can visit our website at the Shift, Sustain, Succeed page and look for certainly registration for future sessions and recordings of past. But we also put links up. So Melissa will try to provide some links to some of where some of those guidelines can be found. so that if anyone hasn't seen them. And there are some different ones for different kinds of business, but I think the governor's been pretty specific about restaurant and probably lodging as well. So,
Yeah.
so what are the risks to businesses who decide not to comply with these recommendations, who decide to just kind of go rogue and keep their customers happy regardless of what the governor's directing?
Well, we've seen a bit of that over the past few weeks, and I get it. We're frustrated. I'm frustrated. I know all of you are frustrated with kind of everything that we've been going through over the past few weeks. But really, you have to keep in mind that even if your local DA or your local police force are saying we're not going to enforce, they're not the ones that are going to come after you and not come after you, with guns or anything like that. But the state has the ability to enforce. Multiple lawsuits have been filed against the governor. All of them have failed. He does have unilateral control here. He does have control over Department of Agriculture. So if you have a license through the Department of Ag, whether a restaurant, a hotel, or any type of food service, they can go after your operating license there. And if you have a liquor license, the LCE, I have never seen the LCE be more active than I have in the last 16 weeks. You don't hear from them forever, and now every day I get a call. But they can pull your liquor license. They can take away your operational capabilities. They can take away some of the things that you can do now, like cocktails to go, if you're in violation of these standards. So I know it's frustrating, and I know you probably have a lot of people that are saying, go and do what you need to do to survive. We're not going to come after you. But the state is going after people that are doing that. So I really urge you to be compliant and not put your license or your livelihood at risk when you could just wait a little bit longer, and hopefully we continue to see a shift in things.
Yeah, I assume there's a cost to that too. If you lose some of those licenses, one, it can shut you down or make you virtually unable to continue, but there may be some costs related to reinstating or using legal help.
Yeah, so a Department of Ag, they're going to use a warning system first. If you ignore the warn, Department of Ag has fines up to $10,000 a day, and then they'll pull your license. LCE has fines that they can state against you, but even to that point, if you have a liquor license and you get fined or you get your license pulled when you're up for renewal, you might not be able to renew your license. So there are long-term effects of some of the decisions that you might make in the moment that you really need to be considering as you're making those decisions.
Yeah, these are, I would just suggest that these are, they're tough decisions, but they reflect the character of your business and your ownership. So this has tested everyone's character, but it really is a good time that we are good examples and models for our community, for our children, and how we get through this. So good things to know. So within those guidelines and, the governor's guidelines and CDC, do you see areas that have a little more discretion than others? We all know people who want to follow the rules. I'm a bit of a rules follower myself. Tell me what to do and I'll do it. And don't yell at me because I'll be following it. But I don't like when things are real vague, and there's been a lot of vagueness. So the truth is there's some things that have been left to interpretation. Do you see places where our businesses have more discretion to kind of design what works for them?
So especially as it pertains to general business operations, restaurant operations, and the rules, if you've read through them, they're very specific, but also it's not a game of gotcha. So it's not that they're going to come and make sure if you have outdoor dining that you have 6 feet of space between the end of your table and the roadway. There is just a general understanding that you need to do your best to be compliant. And I agree with you, Susan, I would love black and white, and I feel like everything's been in a state of gray since this all started. One piece that I think has caused a lot of confusion, a lot of frustration is the mask requirement for guests, especially in green. And I will tell you that it has been frustrating because all the guidance says your guests have to wear masks. And then when you watch the governor speak and he's asked, he was like, well, they should do it. It's the right thing to do. They should want to do it, but we're not going to do anything if they don't do it. And then you as a business owner are sitting there saying, do I need to put somebody in a chokehold because they're entering my business without a mask? Mm-hmm. And in those scenarios, it's your job to inform the public, and it's your job to inform people what they need to do. It is not your job to be the enforcer of those who are not considerate of others and decide not to do it. And there's a lot of that kind of in this guidance of There's guidance that says no dance floors. So you can't really have a band that would encourage people to congregate and dance, but you could have an acoustic guitar player that might provide background music in your restaurant. So it's a lot of just, you read it and then you have to figure out how it applies, how it works for your business, and how you can be compliant. And like I said, the attempt to be compliant, showing that you're doing your best, is not going to get your license pulled. It's going to be those who just kind of throw caution to the wind and do what they want. That's really going to be the ones that are going to be cited and affected by this.
And so kind of to that end, I think one of the challenges for all businesses, but restaurants, I think, are probably facing this even more, is how they communicate that. So there's the literal communication of good signage, and I think you've provided some tools. I'll give you a minute to talk about some of the things you're providing, and we'll give links to those. But there's also the communication of what the business owner, again, going back to the character of the business. So depending on the restaurant you go to, some may really want to follow more specifically the guidelines, and others may want to be looser. And so now you've got the challenge of not just communicating in signage and things like that, but actually kind of letting people know what makes you and your business feel safe and feel like you're doing the right thing by the community. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I'll hit kind of 2 points on that. And that's really key, Susan. If you look at the guidance, there are things that you have to do. There are things that if an agent comes in or an inspector comes in, they're going to be looking for. And then there are things that you're going to want to think about doing because you want your customers to feel comfortable coming back to your restaurant. You want them to see the sanitizing that you're doing. They want you to see you wiping down menus. They want to see barriers between booths. They want to know and feel comfortable coming back into a space. And so that will consist of probably going above and beyond even the basic parameters, because it's not only what you have to do for government compliance, it's what you need to do to make your customers feel safe again. The inherent underlying piece of our entire industry is congregating. We come together, large groups of us, large events. That's not a reality for us. And everybody is now, I think all of us, when we go out in public anywhere, we're constantly thinking about what we're touching. Are we touching our face? Are we touching that surface? Do we sanitize our hands? That's going to be in our world for a while now. So that's going to be really just important of you thinking of what do you need to do to make your customers feel comfortable when they come back to your business. And second to that, and I joke, if anyone's been on any of my weekly webinars, we have a red, yellow, green, but it's really not. I call the phase that we're in now dull green because there's still restrictions. We're not back to normal. We're not at 100%. I've said before, I need like the Crayola, 120 Crayola crown box so I can see all the different shades of green because I think we have a few more shades to go. But we're not out of this yet. So you also, when you're getting frustrated and you're thinking, this is shenanigans, I don't want to do all this, I shouldn't have to. If an infection occurs and it spreads throughout your community, especially because your community is small, that will set you back and we won't be able to move forward. So in the short term, you need to think, big picture. You need to be lockstep with other business owners. You need to be on the same page. We're all on the same team. So do what you need to do to be safe, protect your employees, protect your guests, and know that the more we do that and the more we stay compliant, the faster we're going to get out, be back to 100%, be back to normal. So you really have to consider kind of both pieces in terms of operationally being compliant or not.
Right. And right at the end, we'll talk a little bit about the association, but you've got some great tools available too. So we'll talk about those in a bit. I just want to touch on the, one of the standards that, again, it's a guideline, and I appreciate that we know that someone's not going to come out with their measuring tape. But that said, we've heard of occupancy standards. So restaurants at 50% and lodging maybe having to make some adjustments that, with some time and cleaning that needs to be done between guests. And that is a real challenge for, for how to be profitable. Do you have any encouragement or advice on, creative ways that businesses have worked around that?
So, and I'll tell you, like I said, if there's any caterers on the phone or hotels that host a lot of weddings, we're still working on all of that piece. But I will say, we're yesterday, and we'll start here. PRLA has been really focused on, we're not normal, you're not 100% operational. What do you need to just get in a little bit more revenue? And one of those pieces that we're able to achieve is cocktails to go. So we were able to achieve the ability for restaurants to be able to do mixed drinks, sell them to go. I was really proud of it because I cannot make the type of margarita that my favorite Mexican restaurant can. So, I mean, it was a little selfish when we passed the bill, but it was something that restaurants can do to kind of add on to their takeout model, because takeout's going to be in our world for the foreseeable future. Second to that, social distancing is the name of the game for the foreseeable future. So yesterday, the LCB opened up a portal on their website that will let you extend your licensed premise beyond what your outdoor seating might allow right now. So if you have a parking lot or you have open space next to your restaurant, you would now be able to extend your premise and provide service, put out more tables to customers in that space. And even if you don't have a licensed premise, there's nothing stopping you from using outdoor space to really get creative in terms of service. So 50% isn't going to get people back to normal. We know that. 50% is really, even with social distancing, you might not hit 50% occupancy. So that's why we've been focused, like I said, in terms of mixed drinks, enabling you the automatic ability to extend your premise to provide more of that outdoor dining experience. Those are all things that we're hoping to utilize over the course of the summer, in hopes that when we get to the fall, when things get cold again, we might be back to 100% indoor capacity and back to normal.
Yeah, thank goodness for at least the hopefulness of good weather, that we can eat outside more. That's great information, and we'll definitely want to get that out. It's a perfect example where some community partnerships and business partnerships might be really helpful if businesses want to open their back door and kind of spill out onto the street. We've talked about whether there's some opportunities to do some street eating here, or definitely on sidewalks. So I think we can all, as communities, try to get creative about how we do those things. So as we anticipate more announcements from the governor, do you have any indication or just feelings about where things might loosen up a little bit, where green might get a little brighter?
I would not, and I know kind of generally we were in red for 2 weeks, then yellow for 2 weeks, then we went to green. I don't expect to move from dull green to like medium green in 2 weeks. I think we're going to be here for a little while just to see kind of how this reopening of everybody goes. And the governor has quite honestly said that they have not yet determined what the next step is going to be, what those parameters are going to be. So I can't really predict. I think that we will continue to see movement forward, especially in your community. You guys don't have the number of cases, the number of infections that so many other places in the state had. So you guys are going to move kind of into that next step, probably faster than others. But I am not in the mind of the governor or the Secretary of Health, and they have not delineated what the next step will be. But to get to the next step, it's going to require compliance and keeping your employees and customers safe in the interim. So that's really where we need to focus right now.
Yeah, I've actually been surprised, because I really thought we were going to be stuck in yellow all summer. So I was surprised when we went to green. Even the idea that we might get a little movement on occupancy, or like with events, which certainly events impact our restaurants and lodging, is maybe if we could go from 250 to 500. We're a small town, so a lot of our events are pretty modestly attended anyways. We're waiting anxiously to hear those kind of things. Well, as we end up today's call, I do want to talk just briefly about why it's so important to know your associations, in this case the Pennsylvania Restaurant and Lodging Association. Why we believe there's value in chambers. We're partner organizations. Melissa and I both have our IOM. We've gone and we feel well trained in how to run our organizations and how to work with our constituents. And I just think that your organization has wonderful tools that are available on your website. Everything from signage and guidance, and day to day, a lot of our small businesses don't really think advocacy is that big a deal until it's a big deal. So when you see some of these things that are happening in Harrisburg or in Washington, rest assured that your chambers and associations have been playing an active role in representing you. Whether or not you support us in membership, we're out there trying to represent everyone in the business community. But it is our members that make it possible for us to do that because they provide the funding. I believe, Melissa, you can confirm that you, like us, are funded by your members. That's largely where, what helps you turn the lights on.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I know everybody always says, you're going to do what you're going to do, whether I'm a member or not. But if everybody says that, then we no longer exist and we can't do anything to help. So it really is important to get involved, be engaged, and help us, prioritize what you need. That's really important for chambers and associations as well. We don't know what needs to be done unless we have an active membership communicating with us and telling us. And to your point, Susan, I think being government affairs, I'm a little biased because that's, my bread and butter in the association. But for chambers and associations, we exist to make your lives easier. We want you to run your business. We want you to not think about kind of the nitty gritty, what changes or taxes or loans or things that you need to do. We're here to answer those questions and make it easier for you to operate. That's the basis of our existence. We want you to run your restaurants, not lose sleep. So it's really great that we have the partnership that we do with the state chamber, with local chambers. It's really important that we all work together and that you all be involved in that process.
Great. Do you want to just talk real quickly about some of the tools that you have out there? I've now posted Melissa's contact information. I'm sure she would, welcome a call or an email if you need her, remembering that she's, like everyone, juggling a lot right now. But also the website, we didn't list the website there, but prla.org, right? You can go out to, and there's some of the things that we want to be sure that they take a look at when they visit the website.
Yeah, so we have obviously our main website, and on there's a link to it as well, prla.org/coronavirus. And we have just everything hospitality, ranging from guidance for mixed drinks to go, what you need to know to be compliant with that. We have sourced a lot of PPE, things that you need or things that you might want to think about. For example, if you're going to be putting barriers in, we sourced a lot of that information. We have webinars, just like Susan and the chamber here. Every Wednesday, I do what I call my weekly brain dump, where I tell everybody, this is everything I know about what's going on in the hospitality industry. We have really specific, hospitality industry webinars. We have, and to that point, some of the items where we set above and beyond, we have what we call the Pennsylvania Restaurant and Hotel Promise. And that's also on that site, which is basically something that you can print it out on your own, put it at the front of your hotel, put it at the front of your restaurant. And it's just kind of a commitment that you are making to your employees and your customers that you're creating a safe, sanitized space for them to operate within. And it's just kind of another step to show that you're making a commitment and your guests can see that. So all of that is on our website. We update it daily. We also do a daily update of kind of similar to my weekly brain dump. This is what happened today. All of this is free. We're all in this together right now. So go on our website, kind of look around. And as always, your chamber is there for you. But if you have any specific hospitality things, PRLA is here for you as well. So don't hesitate to reach out with questions, and we will get through this. So like I said, we've been hit harder than anyone else, but we are resourceful, and I'm honored that I get to represent you, and we will come out on the other side.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, I love the Restaurant and Lodging Promise. Definitely worth taking a look at. Again, a free resource if anyone's on the call and needs us to print them out, some poster size or any of those things to post around your business. We'd be more than happy to do that here at the chamber. So thank you so much, Melissa. Wishing you well as you navigate this along with us. So remind listeners, if you liked what you heard, you think someone else needs to hear it, please, keep an eye on our website. We'll have the recording up and you'll be able to share that. Our next session is next Tuesday. We will have Dr. Wolf from Butler Health Systems talking to us about how we stay healthy and fit and navigate, a long summer of hopefully being virus-free in Venango County. So join us for that. And then next Thursday, we will be talking about public relations and how we effectively message, where we're headed. So you can register out on our website. And thank you for joining us today. It's been great. Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you for having me.